Let's get started. Number 10, you're losing friends and your circle is shrinking. This one hurts. You used to have a huge group of people around you. Now you can count your real friends on one hand, and that terrifies you. But researchers at Aalto University in Finland and the University of Oxford analyzed data from 3 million mobile phone users and found something interesting. Your social circle naturally starts shrinking around age 25. That's not a bug, that's a feature. The average 25-year-old contacts about 19 people per month, and that number just keeps dropping from there. Professor Robin Dunbar, the same guy who came up with Dunbar's number, co-authored the study. He found that as people age, they stop maintaining large networks and start investing heavily in fewer, deeper connections. You're not losing friends because something is wrong with you. You're losing friends because your brain is finally learning to prioritize quality over quantity. There's actually a psychology theory that explains this. It's called socio-emotional selectivity theory, developed by Stanford psychologist Laura Carstensen. It says that as people become more aware of how limited their time is, they naturally shift toward relationships that are emotionally meaningful. The party friends, the people you only hung out with because they were convenient. Your brain is quietly firing them, and it's doing it on purpose. Number 9, you feel like everyone else is ahead of you. Your old classmate just bought a house. Your coworker got promoted. Your ex is engaged. And you're sitting there wondering if you missed some instruction manual that everyone else apparently received. This feeling has a name. Psychologist Leon Festinger identified it back in 1954. It's called social comparison theory. And it basically says humans are hardwired to evaluate themselves by looking at other people. The problem is social media turned this instinct into a weapon. Studies show that people overwhelmingly make upward comparisons, meaning you compare yourself to people doing better, not worse. A 2018 systematic review covering 6 decades of social comparison research confirmed this. We almost always look up, not down. And looking up almost always makes us feel terrible. But here's what the research actually shows. Feeling behind is one of the most common experiences reported by people in their 20s and 30s. A LinkedIn survey of over 6,000 people across 4 countries found that 75% of adults between 25 and 33 experienced a quarter-life crisis. 75%. 3 out of 4 people your age feel exactly the same way you do right now. They're just not posting about it. Number 8, you'd rather be alone than surrounded by people. Friday night rolls around and your friends are going out. You could join them, but honestly, your couch sounds better. And then the guilt kicks in. Something must be wrong with me for wanting to be alone. Except researchers say the opposite is true. Psychologist Anthony Storr argued that the capacity to be alone is actually a sign of emotional maturity, not a deficiency. He pointed out that we always measure people by their ability to form attachments. But we almost never consider that being comfortable alone might be just as important. More recent research backs this up. Netta Weinstein and her colleagues found that solitude offers 2 key psychological benefits: authenticity and autonomy. When you're alone, you're more likely to be who you actually are and do what you actually want, not perform for an audience. A landmark study by Larson, Csikszentmihalyi, and Graeff found something wild. After periods of solitude, people reported feeling significantly more alert and cheerful than at any other time, including after socializing. Your brain isn't broken for wanting alone time. It's recharging in the most efficient way it knows how. Number 7, you're questioning everything about your life, your career, your relationships, where you live, what you even want. Nothing feels certain anymore, and the ground under your feet has turned to quicksand. This is textbook quarter-life crisis territory. And psychologist Jeffrey Arnett says it's not just normal, it's a developmental stage. He calls it emerging adulthood, that period between 18 and 29, where your brain is literally still forming. The part of your brain responsible for controlling impulses and making long-term decisions, the prefrontal cortex, doesn't fully develop until your late 20s. So you're being asked to make life-defining choices with hardware that isn't even finished installing yet. The Harvard Business Review broke the quarter-life crisis into 4 phases. First, you feel trapped. Then you separate from what's not working. Then you explore. Then you rebuild. That questioning phase, the one that feels like everything is falling apart, is actually phase 2. You're not lost. You're in the middle of dismantling a life that wasn't working so you can build one that does. Number 6, you're saying no and it feels terrible. You used to say yes to everything, every invitation, every favor, every request. Now you're saying no and the guilt is eating you alive. You feel selfish. You worry people think you're rude. Here's what the research says. People who maintain firm boundaries are actually more compassionate, not less. Dr. Brené Brown's research found that the most empathetic people are the ones with the clearest boundaries, because their kindness is sustainable. They're not running on fumes trying to please everyone. A survey of over 1,000 Americans found that 66% of Gen Z went to events they actively wanted to skip. Almost half of all Americans admitted to going somewhere they didn't want to be. That's not politeness, that's people-pleasing, and it leads directly to resentment and burnout. Studies in interpersonal communication show that boundary setting reduces anxiety and increases a sense of agency. Saying no doesn't make you a bad person. Saying yes when you mean no makes you an exhausted one. Number 5, you feel exhausted for no obvious reason. You're not running marathons. You're not pulling all-nighters, but you're tired all the time, bone-deep tired, and you can't figure out why. Psychologists have identified something called betterment burnout. It happens when your drive for growth and change overwhelms your psychological adaptive systems. Every decision you make, every relationship you reevaluate, every old habit you break, these all drain the same mental battery. Research on change fatigue shows that each change a person experiences draws on their psychological adaptive systems. When changes become too frequent or too intense, those systems get overwhelmed. It doesn't matter if the changes are positive. Your brain processes a promotion, a breakup, a move, and a new fitness routine through the same stress response pathways. You're not lazy. You're undergoing massive internal renovation, and your brain is running on maximum processing power. That exhaustion is the cost of becoming a different person. Rest isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign your brain is working overtime behind the scenes. Number 4, you're cringing at your old self. You look at old photos, old texts, old social media posts, and physically recoil. Who was that person? How did I think that was acceptable? This cringe response is actually one of the clearest indicators of psychological growth. If you look at your past self and feel nothing, that means you haven't changed. The discomfort you feel is the gap between who you were and who you've become. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for self-awareness, judgment, and impulse control, continues developing into your mid-20s. So the person who made those cringy decisions was literally operating with less developed hardware. A 25-year-old brain is significantly better at self-reflection than a 20-year-old brain. You're not supposed to be comfortable with who you were at 18. That discomfort is your brain's way of confirming that its software got an upgrade. Number 3, you've lost interest in things you used to love. The hobbies that used to excite you feel flat. The music you used to blast doesn't hit the same. The friends whose jokes used to crack you up now just feel immature, and you're wondering if something is wrong with you for not enjoying the things that used to make you happy. Nothing is wrong with you. Your values are shifting. Research on identity development shows that as people mature, their interests naturally evolve to match their changing sense of self. What felt exciting at 20 often feels hollow at 27 because you're not the same person anymore. Your brain has different needs now. The activities that used to give you dopamine hits might not align with the deeper fulfillment your brain is now wired to seek. You're not losing your personality. You're outgrowing a version of it. The things that replace those old interests will likely be more meaningful, even if they feel less exciting at first. Number 2, you feel like a fraud. You got the job, the promotion, the opportunity, and instead of celebrating, your brain immediately starts whispering, "They made a mistake. They're going to find out you don't belong here." This is impostor syndrome, and research suggests around 70% of people experience it at some point. Originally identified by psychologists Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes in 1978, it was first studied in high-achieving women. But follow-up research found it hits everyone. Here's the irony. The people most likely to feel like frauds are the ones who are actually competent. The Dunning-Kruger effect shows that people with low ability tend to overestimate their competence. Meanwhile, people with genuine skill underestimate themselves. Your brain is essentially punishing you for being self-aware enough to recognize how much you don't know. That's not a flaw. That's intellectual honesty. The real frauds never worry about being found out. Number one, you stopped caring what people think, not in a reckless way. You still care about being a decent person. But the constant background noise of wondering what everyone thinks about you has gotten quieter, way quieter. And that silence feels suspicious. Like, maybe you should be more worried about other people's opinions. Laura Carstenson's socio-emotional selectivity research at Stanford explains this perfectly. As people develop emotionally, they naturally become more selective about whose opinions actually matter to them. The opinions of random acquaintances, internet strangers, that coworker you barely talk to. Your brain starts filtering those out. This isn't apathy, it's efficiency. Your brain is reallocating energy from monitoring 100 different people's potential judgments to focusing on the handful of relationships that actually impact your life. Studies show that this shift toward emotional selectivity is associated with greater well-being and life satisfaction. The people who care least about what everyone thinks tend to be the most psychologically healthy, not because they don't care about anyone, but because they've figured out who actually deserves that mental real estate. So, if your life feels like it's falling apart right now, if you're losing friends, questioning everything, feeling exhausted, and cringing at who you used to be, take a breath. Those aren't symptoms of failure. Those are symptoms of someone whose brain is actively under construction, building something better. You just can't see the blueprints yet. That's all for today. If this one hit a little too close to home, do me a favor and subscribe. I'll be making more videos like this, and I promise your future self will thank your present self for sticking around.